Okay, so looking at tessellations, what we're going to do today is take a look at different patterns, the patterns we've been talking about and the shapes we've been talking about. I'm going to give you some freedom and flexibility, but I wanted to also incorporate some Indigenous art in this as well. Have you learned about Indigenous art or done that in another class or know anything about it? Okay, so like everything else, there's some people saying yes and some are saying no. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep this very basic. I'm going to allow you freedom and flexibility to choose how much of the Indigenous designs you're going to incorporate in it. But I would like to take this as an opportunity to go through a little bit. Now I will say this first tessellation is very complex. Like this is someone who, I just got this from an artist who had posted this online. And it's a very intricate pattern. Can you see the tessellation? So part of it is shaded so you can see it really well, but the other parts that aren't shaded actually look exactly like these parts here that do have the shading with them. So can you see that it's the same pattern that's just being rotated? So like that rotation we talked about. And each part of it fits into the other part, which is why it's considered a tessellation. Tracy? The non-shaded part has an extra wing. Okay, good, very perceptive. Everybody see that? Because if you look at the bottom of the shaded part, it doesn't have a wing here that the other part does. Okay, so, but do you see that if you look at it, so these are being rotated and show the same pattern, right? And then the ones in between, so I'll do them maybe in another color. There's some subtle differences, but it's still somewhat following the same pattern, right? So there's subtle differences, but do you see overall that it's sort of fitting together like puzzle pieces? So they've altered the unshaded one slightly in order to make them fit. I'm not expecting something quite like this. This is like professional level. Like this is really impressive. So I will scroll through and show you some other designs, but I wanted you to first get an idea or a picture of how this could potentially look. And then I'll show you some others that also have some variations of tessellation. And you can also see, do you see these patterns? Like this shape in here is something that's coming up often in the Indigenous art that we're looking at. And then I'll show you when I get to some others, but this also, do you see that this image here is being rotated essentially around the circle in the center? So you can see that it basically is built on taking the same shape and just like rotating it or redrawing it in different areas. Does that make sense? Okay. And then just to show you, if we had a maple leaf or the Canadian flag, here's an example of how to incorporate, so something that looks familiar to you. We all know the flag and the maple leaf well, right? We see it often. So you can see that these shapes have been basically put into all the red portions in order to incorporate the Indigenous design into something that already exists there. So I basically just chose these, first of all, because I love them. I feel like they're beautiful. Also, they have Lord Byng colors. And you get to see how we can take any shape that we're working with and we can incorporate those Indigenous designs within it. And then you can color or shade or do whatever you want to make it unique and to make it, turn it into something that you like, and that it gives you an opportunity to be creative in a class where we don't always get to do that. We've done it a few times, but not very often. And then down here, just before I give you a chance to work on this, I wanted to show you, so this one here is an example of how, like this part here shows you just the basic designs with basic rectangles. Remember we talked about polygons? So there's basic rectangles that have all sort of fit together like puzzle pieces. But then you notice in this part here, that's where the Indigenous patterns and the shading have been brought in to sort of incorporate that Indigenous design within something that's pretty basic or straightforward, which is just basic rectangles. And then I showed you this one here just to give you an example. If you would rather do a parallelogram like this and have that one piece fitting into the other and then draw in the Indigenous designs into that, you're welcome to do that. Yesterday we looked at triangles that were rotated so that one fits onto the other. You could use triangles to do it. So I'm going to give you the choice, but the key is you're covering the whole page. I'm going to give you this dotted paper because I figured it would be easier for you to have something to sort of use as a background to help you to figure out how to keep things consistent. But I felt like graphing paper with lines would be too much, like it would sort of be overwhelming or would take over. This is a little more subtle. So basically, the assignment is to create your own tessellation and incorporate Indigenous designs or art into it. You can be as creative as you like, using colors, etc., using colors, pencil crayons, whatever you have, felts, or you can shade it in using pencil.